This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We're going to be shaking and baking today, believe me. There's so much in the news. And as you know, we don't just regurgitate the news. We at Freedom Watch, and Larry Klayman personally, we make the news. And that's why it's so important that we get into what's been happening, because you see, this is not just a question of obtaining documents. I've said this before. It's a question of actually doing something. And that's something that we strive to do at Freedom Watch. I'm doing today at Freedom Watch what Judicial Watch used to do, bringing hard-hitting cases. And I commend getting documents. And we saw a number of hearings this week on Capitol Hill, particularly with the House Judiciary Committee, uncovering more corruption at the FBI, more corruption with Special Counsel Robert Mueller, more corruption in general. But generally what we see is just talk and no action. As one example, Congressman Trey Gowdy, he's very good on TV, but I've had experience with him. Beyond the TV, he does little to nothing. So it's time that somebody do something. And that's why I urge you to go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. Sign our petition to remove Special Counsel Robert Mueller. We have filed a lawsuit to actually attempt to do that. And that lawsuit is in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. It was assigned to a judge named Amy Berman Jackson, highly partisan. So I've had to move to disqualify her to get another judge. We need your strong moral support. We need your strong support in terms of petition, and we need your strong financial support, because this is going to be very costly. Because I got to tell you something. You can watch all the Fox News you want to watch. You can be captivated on Hannity and on Laura Ingram's show and on Tucker Carlson's show. And I, watch those shows myself. I'll tell you, I watch the other side as well to see what the left is doing. But talk is talk. Action is action. We are your private Justice Department. So go and fill yourself in at freedomwatchusa.org. Sign our petition. Get on our mailing list. Support us financially to take Robert Mueller out legally. And why do we need to do that? Because the president, who is the government technically, but not really, because there's a deep state, the president has 3 lawyers, all D.C. swamp lawyers. The first of them is Ty Cobb, great-grandson of the famous baseball hero. Unfortunately, this Ty Cobb strikes out. Ty Cobb represented John Wong during the Chinagate scandal that I helped uncover when I was running Judicial Watch. John Wong was a suspected Chinese spy. Ty Cobb was running interference for Hillary Clinton. So what the heck is he doing representing President Trump, particularly in light of all the corruption, whether it's Uranium One or Fusion 360, GPS rather, 360, or whatever the scandals may be, the email scandal? Why is he the principal Trump lawyer? Then there's John Dowd, who is a Republican swamp creature, establishment, never want to stick his neck out, plays the game in Washington. And the third one is Jay Sekulow, who's a very fine religious rights lawyer, but he has little to no criminal defense experience, no matter what he may say when he appears on Fox News. He just doesn't. And these people are part of the Washington establishment. They don't want to rock the boat. They have other clients that need things from the Justice Department, that need things from the FBI for their cases. So they don't want to push. What the president needs are strong lawyers outside of Washington who aren't dependent on the Washington establishment. But he doesn't have that. And these lawyers are not pushing back. They could have been bringing cases under the Fourth Amendment like I did against the NSA, where we prevailed with 2 preliminary injunctions, having a court rule that it was unconstitutional. We know that the president was illegally surveilled by the FBI under James Comey. We know that he was wiretapped. And that's probably why we also have Attorney General that won't do anything, because he's probably on some of the wiretap recordings. This was during a period of the campaign, of the presidential campaign, and thereafter. What we basically have, and this is what I'm saying, it's not an advertisement, ladies and gentlemen, it's the truth. We have a government establishment, law enforcement establishment, that is completely broken down, that is completely corrupt. We know that the FBI had an agent working on all these cases who was anti-Trump, who with his mistress was claiming that they were going to investigate and take down Trump's insurance policy in case he won the presidential election. We have James Comey, who's leaked information into the public domain about conversations with the president. We have an FBI, which is run basically by a kid right now by the name of Christopher Wray, who's scared to take any strong actions. He's basically just a yes man. It's a terrible situation. And then we have the president's lawyers who are inert, who are taking punches for the president. And we know that Mueller now, having indicted Mike Flynn, giving him a very easy deal, is trying to use him to take down the president of the United States. And I hope that General Flynn holds firm on that. And that's why you need Judicial Watch. That's why you need Freedom Watch. That's the way Judicial Watch used to be. But that's not the way it is now. It's Freedom Watch now that needs to do the job in court, not just get documents, but bring lawsuits. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, sign the petition to remove Robert Mueller. We have a live court case which is attempting to do that. We have to take care of a very biased, politicized judge by the name of Amy Berman Jackson, who's been sitting on the Manafort prosecution and doing everything she's asked to do by Robert Mueller, and she's also in this case, so we're taking her out. And I'm confident that in the end, we will prevail because we have the wind at our back. We have justice at our back. We have the law at our back. And therefore, I urge you to do that. What you see on Capitol Hill is a dog and pony show. They make a lot of noise, but in the end, they don't put their foot forward. Look at what has gone on during the Obama administration. Fast and furious. They held former Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt, that is in front of their committees, but never enforced that before a court of law. They, of course, went after the IRS for discriminating against conservative groups. They held a lot of hearings. They got themselves on TV, again, Fox News primarily. What happened in the end? They did nothing. And then, of course, there's Benghazi. This is Trey Gowdy who chaired that committee. He took a dive on that and exonerated Hillary Clinton. These people on Capitol Hill, put simply, are frauds. They're out there for themselves. They want to pat themselves on the back and get reelected and get campaign contributions. But in the end, they do nothing. And that's why we're in the state that we are. And then we have a judiciary that's largely leftist and generally favors the Obama-Clinton deep state. So we need to keep punching legally. We need to take this country back. We need to make sure that justice is done, and we're doing everything we can at Freedom Watch to bring those kinds of hard-hitting cases. And that's why we need to remove Mueller. We need to push back. And here's my suggestions to the president's lawyers. They should be bringing a case against the National Security Agency, the CIA, and the FBI for illegally surveilling the Trump campaign and President Trump, his associates, and his family. They should also be bringing a racketeering case. You can bring it civilly in court. I've done that. We brought a case against Hillary Clinton years ago. It was assigned to a Clinton judge in Palm Beach who dismissed it. It then went up to the very leftist 11th Circuit who affirmed the dismissal. We're still coming up with ways to get to Hillary Clinton legally. Our citizens' grand juries in Ocala, Florida, we're going to be cranking them up again. We're going to be doing whatever we have to do. And if you want to read that, go to freedomwatchusa.org. We are taking every possible legal step here to make sure that justice is done. And let me tell you something. We're going to get a little bit into the next segment about this. This is something that has not come out. We know that the Associate Attorney General, who's since been demoted, His name is Bruce Orr. That he's also sitting on the crime task force of the Justice Department. He's the head of it. We know that his wife worked for Fusion GPS. We know that he met secretly with Fusion GPS. We know that he was involved, likely, in the creation of this false dossier by the discredited British spy, Christopher Steele. He is directly implicated in the situation where Clintons paid for this dossier, which gave rise to the calls for a special counsel, Robert Mueller, and gave rise to the pretext to wiretap Trump and his campaign. Well, I dealt with Bruce Orr back in the 1990s. He was supposed to be investigating Hillary Clinton's receipt of nearly $2 million of illegal hard money contributions into her Senate campaign when she ran for Senate in New York. I went with his investigators down to Brazil, where a whistleblower, my client, Peter Paul, was spilling the beans because he had put on that tribute to Bill Clinton in Hollywood in the final days of the administration, which raised the $2 million. We had checks. We had canceled checks. We had thank you notes from Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton thanking them for these illegal campaign contributions. Well, who wound up getting indicted? Peter did, unfairly. He was trying to cooperate. He wanted to help. But he was, in fact, the villain, and he did 10 years in prison. Instead, Hillary Clinton walked off scot-free. This is the same Bruce Orr. This story has not come out yet. This is not new. Bruce Orr is a Clinton loyalist, and that's deeply inside of the Justice Department, along with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's also an Obama holdover, a Democrat, and disloyal to the president. And then we have an Attorney General who sits on his heels and does nothing. We're going to come back into this second segment, and we're going to talk about what we can be doing to correct this situation, because our justice system is broken down. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and sign up for our petition. We'll be right back.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I want to introduce now, he's been on our show before. He's my very good friend, former Congressman Bob Barr, now in private practice, somebody who I consult with a lot because I really respect him. And Bob Barr is the antithesis of what you see on Capitol Hill today. Bob Barr put his money where his mouth was. Bob Barr submitted articles of impeachment against Bill Clinton. Bob Barr was never afraid to actually do something. He just didn't pontificate and go on Fox News and deceive the American people like you see these congressmen to do today. And I want to introduce you to somebody who's a great hero to me, and also my very good friend, and in some respects my partner when we can work on cases together. Bob?
Thank you so much, Larry, for that kind introduction, and it's always good to be with you because you talk about real issues with the backbone, as you say, is so often missing in the public arena and in particularly the political arena.
Bob, what's your take on what's going on right now with the FBI and the Justice Department? And the reason that I'm so agitated today is that I've seen this for so many years. You know, I've been in and around Washington, D.C., founding Judicial Watch, then Freedom Watch, in the interim running for the U.S. Senate myself. Thank God I wasn't elected because that would do no good with the 99 other senators. But I'm really, in fact, upset about seeing these congressmen on TV, again, pontificating, but yet not really pushing for a special counsel or, for that matter, even a real investigation on Capitol Hill. Give me your thoughts on that.
My thought was exactly the same as yours, Larry. I listened on the radio just the other day to part of the questioning of Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, by the House Judiciary Committee, and I was struck by the fact that things are the same up there with the majority of these members of Congress as they always were. The majority will ask questions, but they will not follow up. They will not ask the hard questions. They will not insist on answers. They will let these witnesses skate off time and time again simply by saying, oh, that's under investigation, we can't talk about it. Oh, that's something that we'll be glad to talk about off the record. Oh, that's something that the Inspector General is looking at, and we can't look at that. The question should be, Mr. Deputy Attorney General, is there anything that the Department of Justice is doing that the Inspector General is not looking at? And regardless of whether an Inspector General might possibly, perhaps, be looking at something, that does not in any way lessen the responsibility that the Department of Justice has to give the Oversight Committee, in this case the Judiciary Committee, the information it needs to ensure that our government is operating within the bounds of the law and is doing what they ought to be doing. And just pontificating, as you say, or issuing public statements or asking a few superficial questions and then moving on to something else puts your finger on one of the primary problems that we have in our government, and that is the lack of interest in truly holding the executive branch accountable.
Well, and why is that? I think that a lot of it has to do with our intelligence agencies that has a lot of dirt on a lot of these congressmen and senators. We now live in an age where we have Salem witch trials where people are indicted by innuendo and things like that, and they are afraid to push too hard. And they saw what happened to President Trump when he was pushing at the outset of the administration. Stuff comes flying out about meetings with Russian ambassadors and everything else that is supposed to be classified. This is while he was president, and I think they're afraid of that. But also, you raised a really good point, because I watched that hearing too. Rosenstein was asked a very simple question. Did the FBI pay for the dossier of Christopher Steele of Fusion GPS? Now, why can't he answer that question? Well, you know what? When he was U.S. attorney in Maryland, he was investigating that. He took a dive. He doesn't want to answer that question. Right, Bob?
They don't answer, and they are not made to answer, and they need to. And it really is hurting our entire system. The government is losing credibility, but they seem to not care about that, Larry. They used to care, but they don't seem to anymore.
Well, that's the thing. We're in a nosedive, Bob. I mean, this country's at rock bottom. And it was John Adams said, without ethics, morality, and religion, we will not have a lasting liberty. We clearly don't have ethics and morality. People have religion, but frankly, not many of those. But right now, we're on the cusp of going down for the count, and that's why I am so upset today. And that's why what we do at Freedom Watch, go to freedomwatchusa.org, is so important. We are unafraid. Former Congressman Bob Barr. Bob, I want to thank you for your service. Hopefully you'll be available next week to give us your thoughts as well, because this is an ongoing story that we cannot give up on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Larry.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
Listening to Bob Barr, you can now understand why it's so important to support Freedom Watch. We are the mouse that roared. We are your Justice Department. Back in 1994, I founded Judicial Watch because I had seen that the government could not police itself. We became a private Justice Department. I brought lawsuits which helped uncover the Chinagate scandal, that is the bribery of the Clintons by the communist Chinese, the Chi-Coms, in exchange for turning over classified national security information and other acts of treason. We brought cases with regard to the illegal obtaining of FBI files, hard-hitting cases in that regard, which were used by Hillary Clinton to smear adversaries, and Bill, I might add. We brought cases with regard to Travelgate, when the Clintons fired their White House travel office to hire their own personal friends so they could control that. We brought cases with regard to the IRS that was being misused by the Clintons even back then. We brought cases with regard to RICO, and shareholders derivative suit because Loral was turning over classified information to the Chinese on missile development. It went on, and we had a lot of hard-hitting cases. And, of course, I left Judicial Watch in 2003 to run for the U.S. Senate in Florida. It wasn't the right time. I didn't win. I came out and I started Freedom Watch. Now, Judicial Watch continued on with the people that I left behind, and they continued to seek documents. They learned how to do it. I taught them how to do it. And that's very good to get the documents. I'm not knocking that. But you need much more than documents. When you get up on the dance floor, either you dance or you sit down. You don't just get documents. You can't play cards with just the cards. You got to have a strategy behind the cards. You got to put money on the table to win. And that's what Judicial Watch doesn't do anymore. They don't put money on the table. I'm putting the money on the table at Freedom Watch, and I need your money, frankly, to support it. So go to freedomwatchusa.org because we need to ramp up. We need to be bigger. We need to really fight this government. And that's what we've done, is that we have this lawsuit seeking to remove Robert Mueller. Because about 3 or 4 months ago, I had filed a complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility and the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Justice, because Robert Mueller has been leaking information, grand jury information, to try to smear the president, to try to smear Paul Manafort and his partner Rick Gates, to try to smear Mike Flynn, General Mike Flynn. And to do that, he had to violate criminal statutes over leaking grand jury information. You can read the newspaper. Every day we have some new revelation of what the special counsel's doing. That's not supposed to happen. And Mueller thinks he can get away with it. And no one challenges him on that. And that's what we're talking about Congress. They don't want to talk about that. And our Justice Department, run by the Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he's put his head in the sand because he himself is under investigation by Mueller for allegedly obstructing justice by firing James Comey, the friend of Robert Mueller. Well, you know what? These two agencies of the Justice Department did nothing. They won't even acknowledge that a complaint was filed. So I filed a lawsuit to force them to conduct an investigation to confirm that there are these criminal leaks by Mueller and his conflicted staff. That's part of the complaint as well, because they're Clinton loyalists. They're Obama loyalists. One of them, Andrew Weissman, even went to a election night party of Hillary Clinton in New York City, hoping probably that if she was elected, he would become Attorney General or something to that effect, that she would nominate him and he'd get confirmed. The system is so inherently corrupt. So we're asking this court to order an investigation, and once these illegal leaks are confirmed, to order Mueller off the investigation, to get another special counsel, someone who's honest, someone who is not conflicted, someone who's not partisan, someone who's not part of the Washington swamp, that will end this travesty within a reasonable period of time, not at taxpayer expense. Mueller has already spent, reportedly, and there's probably a lot more than that, $7 million of your money conducting this charade of a Russian collusion investigation, and he's come up with zip to date. But he'll come up with something because he's now got the cooperation of Mike Flynn. Now he's got Manafort on the ropes. God knows what could happen under those circumstances. And we don't know what else he's done, but we know that he's profiting from illegal surveillance on President Trump and everybody else in and around Trump. So we don't know exactly everything that he's got. And that's why what we're doing at Freedom Watch is so special. And that's why we need your support. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign the petition to remove Mueller. Also sign the petition to have Larry Klayman, yours truly, appointed special counsel, because, see, I'm not afraid. I'm not part of the Washington swamp. Many years ago, the National Journal, which is slightly left of center, said about me, the one thing that people find exasperating, the major thing they find exasperating about Larry Klayman in Washington, D.C., is that he has no establishment credentials and he seeks none and therefore has nothing to protect. That was a leftist publication that said that. That's probably the most accurate and nicest thing that anyone has said, because, you see, I'm unafraid. I know what I have to do. And although some people who aren't religious may not give this much weight, I do believe that Jesus has his hand on my shoulder. And I don't know exactly what he has in store. He's come to me a couple times in my life. He's spoken to me. But I believe that I have a mission, and I need your help to do that. And that's why we do need your strong financial support, because we need to get bigger, because we frankly are the only group out there that's really doing anything. You know, the American Center for Law and Justice, and I like what they do in religious rights, they sued the IRS. That was good over the discrimination with the IRS. But you know what they got in the end? Jay Sekulow, one of the president's lawyers, simply an agreement that the IRS won't do it again. And that's not enough. It's not even part of a consent judgment. And consequently, you need someone who will take these strong actions. And I'm telling you, please go to our website, sign that petition to not just remove Robert Mueller, and we have this lawsuit to do that, but also a petition to urge the President of the United States to have me appointed as special counsel to investigate Hillary's email scandal, which we know was covered up by the FBI, more revelations just in the last day or so, and also with regard to Fusion GPS, this false dossier that resulted in Mueller's appointment in large part, and Uranium One, where the Clintons took hundreds of millions of dollars of bribes while she was Secretary of State, so the Russians could acquire about 20% of our uranium assets, which is a strategic commodity, not just to build nuclear bombs, but it's also used for radiation, chemotherapy, and all kinds of medical reasons. And that is a segue into another case that I'm involved with, which I consider to be the case of the century, and that's the case involving Cliven Bundy in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I've been spending nearly all of my time these days in trial. And go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. That's one word, Cliven, C-L-I-V-E-N, Bundy, B-U-N-D-Y, defensefund.org, and please contribute to that as well. I'm representing Cliven Bundy in my private capacity in a number of ways. I tried to get into the case as criminal defense lawyer. So far, the judge, who's the hand-picked person, I'm trying not to use derogatory language these days, of Harry Reid, that corrupt Nevada senator who's retired, but behind the scenes, he's still largely in control of the Democratic Party. He put her in there because he and his son were trying to take Cliven's land away from him. Cliven is the last rancher standing in the West, for the most part, the biggest. And he ranches over 400,000 acres in and around Lake Mead. Now, this is a very arid environment where there's not much for the cattle to eat. And years ago, the Bureau of Land Management, who, not coincidentally, Harry Reid, during the Obama administration, put in his hand-picked person to run it, Neil Coran, who was his chief of staff, they prevent these cattle from eating over these environmental regulations. Then they want to charge Cliven and the other ranchers money to administer to the land and, in effect, administer themselves out of business because they tell these ranchers where their cattle can graze and everything else, and then you have to pay for that. Well, Cliven refused to pay the grazing fees. He never signed the contract with BLM to have to pay them. But sure enough, under the Obama administration, Harry Reid, because they wanted to take the land away from Cliven Bundy, they sent in these Bureau of Land Management goons, these mercenaries, to threaten the lives of the Bundy family if they didn't leave and if they didn't turn over all their cattle. And when the Bundys stood up to this heavy-handed, tyrannical Obama administration government, what happened? Their lives were threatened. Cliven's sister, Margaret, was viciously assaulted and thrown to the ground. His two of his sons, Ammon and Davy, were tased with tasers. Their family dog was nearly killed. It was kicked. And tens of cattle, mainly the bulls that help you create a herd and keep it in operation, were killed and buried in a mass grave. And we now know what's come out in this case, because this case is so important, because the Bundys stood up to the federal government, and what did they get? They wound up getting indicted, and they didn't harm a hair of any of the federal goons that came there, the agents. They, in fact, were harmed. But people seeing that came to their rescue in terms of a peaceful protest. And some of these people were armed. They were using their Second Amendment rights of self-defense, which is fine. And they didn't harm any federal agent. They didn't point guns at the federal agents. But the government believed, under Obama in particular, that it was all powerful. And if you ever stand up to the federal government, we will crush you. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like King George III in the days leading up to the first American Revolution. And I say the first because there will surely be a second if things continue as they are today. But the Bundys try to do it legally. And they believe in the Constitution. You know, they're Mormons. Mormons are very good people. They believe, just like everybody else, Christians and Jews, they believe in Jesus Christ. And they believe that our Constitution is incorporated into their Book of Mormon. They believe that they have to stand up for the Constitution as they would for religious rights under the Book of Mormon. And they believe that the United States is the promised land. Now, they love Israel. They're one of the tribes of Israel. In fact, it's easier to become a Mormon if you're Jewish, interestingly enough. Cliven's great-grandfather was named Levitt. That's a Jewish name. And they therefore see the United States really as their promised land. And if you violate the Constitution, it's an affront to their religion and everything they believe in. And I can tell you, of all my clients that I've ever represented, this is among the finest group of people, the Bundy family, that you'll ever meet. And Cliven, could probably plead out for time served at this point, but he won't do that. He's been in jail unjustly for 2 years. They haven't proved anything. The prosecution's case is falling apart. In fact, it's reported in the press today that a whistleblower came forward with more prosecutorial misconduct. This case should be ended. It should be dismissed. And these prosecutors should be prosecuted. And so should FBI agents, because they were hiding information and they were threatening the Bundy family. It's part of this whole corruption at the FBI these days. And I'm fighting that. And again, I filed a complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility and the Inspector General of the Justice Department. I had asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to step in to involve himself in this case. Instead, he said, I'm not taking sides because this guy, cowardly, is scared of his shadow. He doesn't want to do anything to rock the boat. He just occupies space over at the department, does a little bit with immigration, but beyond that, he's probably down in the White House gym working out. He doesn't do much of anything. So I brought this case, and it's coming to a hearing on Tuesday, December 19th in Washington, D.C., where I'm asking a federal judge to order the Department of Justice to do an investigation of the prosecutorial misconduct of hiding documents, secreting documents, of violating constitutional rights of the FBI and the Bureau of Land Management, threatening the Bundys' lives, and then withholding information that should have been produced in the criminal defense of this case. And I'm asking that this matter be ended. So go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. Please contribute to that defense fund. It's very costly to be sitting out there in Nevada. And this trial is scheduled to last 4 months, probably going to last longer at this point. So go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org, contribute to that defense fund, support Cliven Bundy. Cliven Bundy's rights are your rights, and if he goes under, and if he has to do life imprisonment, I hate to say this, but you're next. So I urge you, support that case at ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. We'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, patriots and fellow supporters, let me tell you what the real risk here is. And that is we are enmeshed in all of this scandal. We have a corrupt FBI, which sits under the Justice Department, which is also corrupt. We have intelligence agencies that feel that they can surveil hundreds of millions of Americans. We know that Dennis Montgomery, the whistleblower, that was also deep-sixed by Comey and the FBI. You know all about that. He's been on our show. He left with 47 hard drives, 600 million pages of information showing illegal surveillance, not just on President Trump when he was a businessman, not just Larry Klayman, but the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, other justices, 156 judges, everybody who was anybody and would challenge the government or prominent was subject to surveillance, plus hundreds of millions of other Americans. Their telephone messages were being obtained by the NSA and the CIA, and he was deep six too. Now, we have an issue on the horizon. That's the reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. This allows the intelligence agencies and the FBI to intercept overseas phone calls and internet communications if there's communication with a foreign party. That party doesn't even have to be a terrorist, doesn't have to be a criminal. They just do it willy-nilly. And we know that this statute was used to unmask communications of people in and around President Trump, including General Mike Flynn and others, illegally. The Obama administration backdoored illegal surveillance of American citizens using Section 702. This statute is up for reauthorization. And the Congress correctly, after we brought our lawsuits and the judge found these kinds of activities to be unconstitutional, came up with the USA Freedom Act. Well, now we find out that that act is being violated too. That was meant to stop this. But Section 702 is also subject to reauthorization by the end of December. And Section 702, they're also trying to modify on Capitol Hill, calling it the USA Liberty Act. So now you have the Freedom Act and the Liberty Act. And this administration, and President Trump, frankly, is clueless as to what's going on here, because the FBI and Sessions at the Justice Department think that this kind of activity can continue, and it cannot. And we are fighting in the courts. Again, we have lawsuits over the illegality of Section 702, that's the way it's being administered to. And that's why you need to go to freedomwatchusa.org to support us in that. We are up against very powerful forces. And I'll tell you why the Justice Department, Sessions, and the FBI doesn't want this section to be eliminated. There's a CIA director by the name of Mike Pompeo. Not a very smart guy. President Trump kind of likes him. He's been deceived. And in fact, he's even rumored to be the next Secretary of State if Tillerson leaves. But these people have so much control over the swamp in Washington. They have the dirt on everybody that when push comes to shove, somebody like Sessions, who likely was wiretapped along with Trump, when in fact Comey was doing the wiretapping of the Trump Tower illegally during the presidential campaign, is undoubtedly worried about dirt that these agencies have on him. He is putting his interests ahead of the American people. He doesn't want to lose his job. He doesn't want to be discredited. People have called him a racist unfairly. He's not a racist. If you're from the South, that doesn't mean that you're a racist. In fact, the South is less racist than the North these days. But he's been supporting this with the Justice Department and the FBI, and that's why we need your strong support, because we have lawsuits in front of Judge Leon, who previously ruled this conduct unconstitutional. So again, go to Freedom Watch USA, see what that's all about, because our Fourth Amendment of the Constitution prevents the government from, in fact, breaking into your home electronically or otherwise and violating your privacy. The Founding Fathers put that in effect because that's what King George III was doing. His spies were doing these kinds of things, and they wanted to make sure that the American people did not have a tyrannical government sitting atop them. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, when the government fears the people, there's liberty. But when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. And that's what we have today. And that's why we have a bunch of do-nothings in Washington, D.C., because these intelligence agencies have dirt. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. I hate to keep pumping this, but we need your strong financial support. We are, proverbially speaking, the only game in town. We'll be back next week with more of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, God save America, because we need God's prayers. God bless you.